So yeah, the entire idea behind metaphorical truth is to piggyback on the word truth, because that's something that has serious it's a serious matter as far as epistemology and worldviews. So Jordan Peterson has decided that he needs to commandeer the word truth. Now, the thing about metaphorical truth is that metaphorical truth is defined as that which helps you survive. Okay? Now, the connection between that which helps you survive and truth is completely arbitrary. But Jordan Peterson nonetheless makes that connection. And he makes that connection because he wants to commandeer the word truth, because it has deep, significant, intrinsic meaning to human beings. Now, the problem is that you could basically make that same connection about anything, right? I'm a fan of the Chicago Cubs, and I'll call that Cub truth, right? I could say that I um, like the color green, and I could call that metaphorical truth, right? It
Oh, they're
doesn't
opinions,
matter.
right? Opinions.
It doesn't matter what you connect to truth. It's all going to be completely arbitrary,
Well, you
right?
just mentioned opinions, right?
Shut up, E3.
So the next thing that comes in is, since we know that metaphorical truth simply means that which helps you survive, we can actually do away with the usage of metaphorical truth altogether. And if you do that, when you listen to the dialogue, it sounds completely trivial because it loses all the baggage that is attempted to be commandeered by the word truth. For example, if someone says, in the old times, they thought that death was in the air because of malaria, and that was metaphorically true, right? Well, let's try our experiment, right? In the old times, they thought death was in the air, and that helped them survive. Completely takes the gravity out of the statement from being some sort of like deep, sort of ancient knowledge, spiritual statement to something completely trivial like X helped them survive. All right, so now if you go around and you replace metaphorically true with just what they define it as, which is help them survive, everything becomes like that. And what are you left with? Jack shit.
Can I respond to that?
Go ahead.
When did we're talking about Jordan Peterson here?
Well, there are a couple of them that subscribe to metaphorical truth.
When did he define it as what helps you survive in a rigorous way?
Well, JonJon certainly has defined it that way. And I believe Jordan Peterson has. I thought that was kind of common knowledge.
Well, I mean, he might have said in a speech, "Truth is what helps you survive." But that's not a rigorous definition. He could mean, like.
He said metaphorical truth.
What did I say? I meant
metaphorical truth is that which helps you survive. That's what he says.
Yeah, I'm not. I think he probably would say something like that in a lecture context. My first question was, did he ever define it like
said that in
a
lecture
way?
context, in an interview context, online, in articles. He's
clear.
He's on record. What's next?
You could say that there are psychological truths, right? There's different categories of truth: aesthetic, ethical, scientific.
There's one truth that corresponds to reality. I mean, B3, we're specifically talking about metaphorical truth. So if you want to bring in some other truth, then fuck off.
Well, wouldn't the things that under that heading going to be psychological truths when he gives them?
Well, you're already using a term which we associate with truth, right?
Which?
The psychological truth.
Would you
Like
consider that
it's a psychological truth that, you know, people are averse to acute pain or something like that. But what Jordan Peterson is doing is taking something that isn't associated with the word truth and commandeering it. For example, that which helps you survive in no context previously has been associated with truth.
Well, what I really wanted to get at was, what does he mean by that which helps you survive? Because it could mean something as ridiculous as like not jumping in front of a train, or it could mean structuring your life properly so that you don't get very depressed and die early from drug abuse. It could mean lots of things. So I wanted to know if it was defined rigorously anywhere.
Are you familiar with this topic?
I've watched Jordan Peterson over the past, I guess he became well known a year and a half ago. I've seen my fair share.
Whatever, dude. You don't even know what the fuck
from the debate
by metaphorical truth. You don't even know the definition. I'm
like
not here to talk to you about that shit.
Sounds
Why
like
don't you catch
away.
up? Running away from what?
The discussion.
The discussion that I was supposed to present to JonJon?
Yeah, now you're running away when someone wants to talk to you about it.
B3 is a fucking sophist.
He's running away from the discussion. I don't understand.
What am I, dude? You don't know. You're just simply asking me questions about the definition. I gave you the definition.
Understand your objections and problems with it.
It sounds like you're trying to understand Jordan Peterson's position. If you want to go find it out, then go ahead and do so.
Well, look, I am familiar with his position. Didn't I just say that?
He said, I don't know, kinda. I've seen some.
Well,
That's
is there
what he
some
said.
criteria that I have to be an expert? Do I have to have like gone to his class? What is your criteria?
Well, I would expect that you know the definition of metaphorical truth to have a discussion about metaphorical truth.
I've watched my fair share, and I haven't.
That seem like a crazy idea to you? Does that seem like a crazy idea to you?
Well, that's why I asked you where he had to find it, like, because he might have mentioned it in a lecture. He's got lots of lectures on there on the YouTubes.
Jesus. Don't say YouTubes when you're trolling it. Makes it obvious.
What about what I said?
This is like a hive mind right now. This is weird.
What about what I said do you disagree with?
Well, I really can't disagree with any of it until I know what you mean by these words and what you're referencing.
So your objection is that you don't think Jordan Peterson has ever provided a rigorous definition of metaphorical truth. And even though it's totally reasonable for Tom to assume that his public definition of the term is totally satisfactory, you're not going to be satisfied until Jordan Peterson provides a definition that meets your narrow personal criteria. Is that your objection? No, answer my question. Is that your objection?
All right, Darth, relax.
Answer my question.
All right, Darth, relax.
Okay, he's a fucking sophist.
Do you want me to answer the question?
Why is he calling you Darth?
Because you're acting like Darth.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is. He's like, answer my question and then interrupting when I start to.
We're waiting,
I'm not interested.
We're waiting.
I'm not interested in hearing you speak anymore. I'm just going to lower you.
That's fine.
Do you have an objection? Yes or no?
Yeah, I guess because I've watched enough Peterson to kind of know how he speaks and get his general meanings. My interpretation of what he would mean by that is kind of like what I said, that there are psychological truths to navigate life. And if you think that he doesn't mean that by it, point me to some different definition other than that.
Well, that's specifically the definition that I was given by JonJon, who was my intended interlocutor.
I don't really care that much about JonJon. I'm more interested in knowing if Peterson's a hack or not, if your reasons are valid.
Look, B3, the whole point is if you're using the definition that Tom's already verified with JonJon, then his argument still holds, right? Is that what you're saying? If that is true, then you're not disagreeing with Tom right now. There's no reason for him to continue the conversation with you.
Well, I mean, JonJon's not here to dispute that.
No. The whole point is that the two definitions mesh directly, right? So he's saying that it helps you navigate life, Well, the only reason it helps you navigate life is because it helped your ancestors navigate life.
Well, I mean, it's not like he's the only person who says that. I'll give you another example. Like Nassim Taleb will say,
well, look, I'm just saying, are you agreeing or disagreeing? Like, don't you think that those definitions still kind of boil down to the same thing, that it helps you survive and has helped your ancestors survive in the past?
That's a basic tenet of conservatism, that even if you don't have a proof
No,
or a
I know.
theory,
I'm just saying that, yeah, like your definition doesn't distinguish from JonJon's definition. Actually, JonJon's definition is clearer.
Well, at first when he meant JonJon, I thought you meant Tom. Well, when he said what
Well,
helps
I
you
mean
survive.
Brett Weinstein's. I mean Brett Weinstein's definition.
See, I don't follow the intellectual dark web people. Besides that, I'm a little bit familiar with.
I know, but Jordan Peterson is taking his definition directly from Brett.
Yeah, I'm not interested in most of those guys. I know a bit about Peterson, but when Tom had just said helps you survive, I was thinking an individual. Now you're saying like other generations, so that's puts a different spin on it.
Look, I'm just saying, Brett's the guy that came up with the whole term.
Oh, good for Brett.
And
yeah.
I mean, it hasn't changed really much since he came up with the term.
Well,
it's just that
the example Tom gave, like death is in the air, that might have been a useful thing, even if it wasn't fully fleshed out.
That's an example that is brought up when this topic is being talked about.
Right, like if that's all you know, then that's still a useful truth to have, even though it's not a full.
Yeah, it helps you navigate life. It helps your ancestors survive.
Right, it was true enough at the time.
Yeah, but so the whole point is that it's a problem to call that truth, because that kind of knowledge is not, like, I don't think it's in any way a subset of truth. It's just
they insist.
Wait, I'm almost done. It's an evolutionarily advantageous belief.
I wouldn't drag evolution into it, because we don't know what does it have to do with evolution?
That's the whole point, is that this discussion has always been couched in evolution.
Yeah, I reject that.
Of evolution, and
I reject all that. I know Brett does. I reject that. I mean, you could call it cultural evolution, but you can't apply any biological evolution to any of this.
Look, like, how does Jordan Peterson distinguish from Brett? Wait, how does Jordan Peterson distinguish from his definition from Brett's?
I'm not interested in the personality.
Well, look, just because you're not interested doesn't mean that there is a distinction. It's the same definition.
Well, whether people
you're engaging a sophist.
People kind of loosely use the term.
He was specifically interested in Jordan Peterson's view.
You're engaging a sophist.
Not Brett.
I'm not interested in the people.
Well, hang on. So people use evolution loosely all the time to apply. It's like part of our pop psychology now to call things evolutionary when they aren't necessarily evolutionary. So I'm more interested.
Look, I'm gonna unmute you just to make one statement, right? And then if you give me the same response you tried to give me earlier, I'm just gonna put you back at like 3% volume.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
The only objection you're making is that Jordan Peterson, or I guess in this case Brett Weinstein's definition, does not meet your very narrow criteria for what constitutes a rigorous definition. Now, when Tom was objecting to the concept of metaphorical truth, he made it clear that the only definition we can use is the one that Jordan Peterson has provided in public appearances, such as videos, lectures, etc. So for you to say that definition doesn't meet your criteria is not an objection. Excuse me, it doesn't make your objection meaningful in any way. I'm not interested in you interrupting me while I'm in the middle of speaking, right? If you're interested in actually objecting to what Tom said about metaphorical truth in that capacity, this would be the time to do that. However, it just seems like you have a semantic dispute which has already been dismissed. So either respond to what Tom said in a substantive way or stop speaking, because frankly, your claims, rather your objections, have been completely disregarded.
See, I think what happened was when you lowered the volume to avoid hearing me, you lost track of the conversation.
So you're not going to respond to anything I said, okay. See, these kinds of people should just be server muted.
Isn't there a rule?
Right, like I don't understand why we allow people to do this. Why are we entertaining what is obviously just sophistry?
Aren't you not supposed to mute?
All right, I'm lowering you to 2% now.
Yeah, I mean, I think my argument.
Productive conversation with this guy. I'm not saying that this guy knows a lot about this stuff, but I mean, Pogan, the way that you're approaching this discussion is pretty indicative of why it's not going anywhere.
I think that the case that I presented is clear. The motivation behind the use of the word truth is to commandeer, although they're saying we're still going to define it, they're commandeering. It's such an intrinsically held belief by every single one, in which we all basically, almost intrinsically, at least to intuitively, know what people mean
Sure.
when they mean
See,
truth.
I don't object to what
Now,
you're saying. Like,
now he is trying to commandeer some of that. Right?
I'll concede that. I'll concede
now,
that.
Anything.
Okay.
Now now let me illustrate why. Okay, because it has weight. It's rhetoric. All right.
Right. I concede the point.
Sophistry, and I'll show you why. Because if you're saying metaphorical truth is equal to, which means that which helps you survive, that means that you can use either one of those words or phrases, and it will mean the same exact thing as the other side.
Sure.
So imagine yourself flipping through the Bible and saying, there is a lot of metaphorical truth in this book. Sacred metaphorical truth. Now imagine yourself flipping through the Bible and saying, there's some stuff in here that have helped people survive.
Sure, I understand that. Now,
it takes away everything that they're trying to do, and they would refuse.
I disagree with all that part.
They would refuse. They would not engage in a discussion about this, in which they weren't allowed to use the word metaphorical truth because they're sophists.
I don't think people are so stupid. I don't think people are so stupid that they're going to be dazzled by the word truth. Like, people all the time co-opt terms like political science. Do I have to listen for 3 minutes? Do I have to listen for 3 minutes and then get interrupted in the first 10 seconds?
You interrupted me.
3 minutes? He talked for like 10 to 15 seconds at most.
That was like at least a minute or two.
Fucking insane.
You interrupted me, but go ahead.
I thought you finished. If you didn't finish, continue.
Yeah. Why are you calling JonJon stupid, B3?
I'm not.
I'm saying again, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't think people are stupid enough to simply be dazzled by the word truth. Like, science is co-opted by all different areas, political science, and that's at an academic level. But people understand political science isn't really a science, or economic science or economic truth, or a lot of people doubt there are really aesthetic truths. So the fact that it's being labeled a certain way, I'll completely concede that that's not right. So I'm more interested in whether what he's talking about isn't important. Is your whole point that he shouldn't call it truth?
Well, I have a personal opinion that he shouldn't call it truth.
Do you have a deeper point about what he's saying, or just that he shouldn't call it truth?
No, it's just manipulation. It's just
you don't really know his motive.
I mean, I can make inferences to his motives, right? I don't have access to his intentional states, but I don't give a fuck, and I'm not going to let that stop me from making assumptions, right? The fact is that the word truth and metaphorical truth is powerful to dumb fucks.
Right. Would you agree that we talk about scientific truths even though they're tentative and will be overturned later or improved upon?
But scientific truth is in accord with the intuitive concept of truth that we have.
Right, but systemic notion.
But right now, or let's say 200 years ago, there were scientific truths that were working for us to a degree, but later turned out, like Newtonian, later turned out to be deeply flawed or incomplete, not true. But because they were functionally beneficial, we called it the truth.
Look, if you take a pragmatic theory of truth, then yeah, there's no conversation to be had here.
Yeah, I'm not even committing to a theory of truth. I'm just saying the word has been used to apply to things that aren't the absolute truth.
It's not. Yeah, but look, the connection is arbitrary.
Well, if you're talking about beliefs people held in the past that they thought they had,
I could say that that which helped people die is metaphorically true. And what would you say? Nothing.
I would say that that was so far away from. I mean,
so far away from what?
It's like what you were doing before when you were saying opinions can be truthful. There's just
so far away from what?
From any normal use of language. Whereas what I'm saying is that metaphorical as you've described it, it seems like people typically use the word truth in that way, that it's partially true or useful.
Right. You see truth often being used in terms of that would help one survive.
Right. For example, well, yeah. Well, if you're saying things that people believe that help them survive that turned out later like the death is in the air thing, to not, it needed a further theory to flesh it out. That seems like a valid way to call it. I think there was a certain truth to it. They didn't know why it was in the air, but it was. So partial truth.
So what do you disagree with me on?
First of all, that this is a new way of using words. Second, that it's based on dishonesty. Third, that it's not in any way valid.
Okay, one at a time. You said that it's what was the first one?
That it's somehow like a huge break in the use of language. That there's no parallels where people use truth or science in a way to kind of blunt their own view. But
What are you talking about? Metaphorical truth was coined recently by Brett Weinstein.
No, I'm talking about the truth part of it. Like, people have used truth in a way that doesn't mean absolute truth. It's not a new thing.
So
that's my first point. It's not something
like what? Scientific truth?
Scientific truth, yeah.
Yeah. That's something that everyone understands, and you don't even need to understand what it means. Right? When you hear scientific truth, you already know what it means. No one knows what the fuck more metaphorical truth means.
I mean, like, what about the facts of life? Like, those are facts, but they're basically
the fact of life. What the fuck are you talking about?
Is it really a fact, or is it just like a way that people are taught to live? Like, so words like facts, truth, and science get used in these type of ways all the time.
What the fuck are you talking about?
This guy's a moron.
All right, next objection.
Okay, so the second one. Let me think. Yeah, I don't remember what this. We're out of.
Okay, there is a third one. What's the third one then?
Oh yeah, the second one was, I don't think that the fact that first of all, he's defined it himself, so I don't think there's anything deeply dishonest about it. No more so than saying political science or scientific truth. Well, that's subjective. You could think he's dishonest. That's your business.
Yeah, it's my subjective opinion, and it's based on. I mean, he already knows what he means by that. He means that it helps you survive.
Yeah, my third objection was that you can call something like that truth, like death is in the air.
Why not just call it blah blah then, huh?
Well, I mean,
because I'll tell you why. Because it doesn't sound fucking cool.
Well, it's not blah.
And fucking spiritual hippy dippy skaters who are Puerto Ricans get fucking like lulled into a sense of stupor from that shit. That's why.
Yep, he's just repackaging shit and presenting it with a bow.
But he's a psychologist, and so he has a certain psychological view based on his clinical practice and his reading. So why doesn't he have a right to promulgate that?
What the fuck?
What's funny about that?
Are you under the impression that we're engaging in a debate where we disagree on the right to propagate certain ideas? Is that
I don't mean the legal right. I mean, like, he has the intellectual right to do that. It's his position. He's a clinical psychologist.
Is that what you think this debate was about? One's intellectual right to fucking do that?
Well, you're saying he's dishonest and these other things. So I don't see how.
It's dishonest because it's manipulative. And yes, that's my opinion. And yes, I don't have access to Jordan Peterson's intentional states.
Do you hold the same standard to Freud or other psychologists who talked about their truth?
Which brand of truth?
Psychological truth, or truths about life, or about things that are the kind of things that would fall under this general heading.
You mean things that were truth psychologically?
Well, can you give me another example besides death is in the air of what he mean, like another metaphorical truth example?
Yeah. Native from the hundreds of years ago is walking around, and in the tall grass he sees a stirring in the bush, and he runs away because he thinks that there is a tiger in the bush. Now, there was no tiger in the bush, but that belief would help him survive. Because if there was a tiger in the bush sometime, then he wouldn't get eaten.
Right, so like rough and ready heuristics then, like things that serve the interests of the group or the individual, but may not be 100% absolutely true.
So I'm fine with just saying, look, In regards to the guy who thought there was a target in the bush, that belief helped him survive.
Right.
Period.
And it may be hundreds of years before we discover why certain behaviors we have adopted are good, right?
I mean, you could call this anything. You could call it like a selection advantage, a selection advantage belief, right?
Yeah.
You can call it that. Metaphorical truth commandeers the word truth, and the word truth is intrinsically very powerful.
Well, I have more problem with metaphorical in the title than truth. I don't know. How is it metaphorical in the first place? These are just like, these aren't metaphors.
All right. What's the third objection?
That was the third. I mean, the third.
Okay. Any other objections?
Well, yeah, I guess the fourth would be that I've watched a lot of Jordan Peterson compared to the average person. Like, I've probably seen 4 or 5 full hours and lots of little clips. Maybe more than I don't know. I mean, I've talked to people about Jordan Peterson, so I've never really heard him talk about metaphorical truth. Isn't this more of a? Would this not be a Brett Weinstein concept?
I was coined by Brett Weinstein.
Is it something that Jordan just picked up here and there? Because it doesn't sound like the main thrust of his work.
I don't see what that has to do with the debate.
I'm just asking.
You want to go over the fucking like origin story of the word metaphorical truth?
I'm just surprised I haven't really seen.
JonJon.
No, I'm just surprised.
Not interested. Not interested.
No, I'm saying I'm surprised I hadn't seen Peterson talk about it because it doesn't sound like his concept or his terminology.
I'm surprised you're referring to personalities now.
Let me point you in the right direction, okay? Go to YouTube and type in Jordan Peterson metaphorical truth, and you'll find some results. I guarantee.
Oh, I bet I would, but I'm just saying I haven't seen it in the normal course of watching.
Okay, not interested in your personal playlist.
I think it's not one of his main ideas.
In your YouTube history. Not interested in your YouTube history.
But I mean, I just feel like it's probably not one of his driving ideas since I've never seen it.
So I'm gonna post the video to Jordan Peterson on the Joe Rogan Experience where he talks about metaphorical truth.
Well, I know only since he's come to this prominence has he really been interacting with these guys like Weinstein and Rubin and the others. So it's probably something he picked up fairly recently.
Suppose that's just a side.
Years ago.
Suppose that's just a side project of Jordan Peterson's viewpoints. Sure. What does that demonstrate?
Oh, I mean, my only interest here is that I've watched enough Peterson to consider him. I have my issues with him, but I don't think he's a charlatan or a hack. I think he's a basically a good guy with a good influence on the people who listen to him.
I mean, yeah, the clean your room stuff, and the psychology.
It's a lot more than clean your room. It's
right, but no one's disputing.
That was your fourth objection.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really an objection. I'm just kind of explaining why.
It's not an objection. Do you have a fourth objection?
Not really. I'm satisfied with the conversation being finished here.
Okay, you're wrecked, I guess.
Okay, all right. So I didn't run away. I answered all 4 of your objections.
Yeah.
And I think you wandered mostly around the topic of which was the original topic, which was metaphorical truth.
Right. I mean, you won the debate. Pat on the head.
Huh?
Said you won the debate. You get a pat on the head.
Okay, thank you.